often when we talk about or think about domestic violence, I think we have a predictively specific narrative or image imprinted in our mind. I know personally, before I entered this line of domestic violence, I thought about it from a very narrow perspective. I thought along the lines of a children's storybook, a once upon a time, a man and woman, or two people met each other, the relationship progressed, and as it progressed, we see two people screaming at each other, which would quickly evolve into people punching holes in walls or using physical violence against their partner. But little did I know that it was much bigger than that. And unfortunately, for those who've been victims of domestic violence, they also understand that it can also include financial abuse. It could be a mother who stays at home and her partner is controlling the amount of finances that she has access to. And I'm ashamed to say that I had a very limited perspective, and because of that, it was extremely hard for me to identify domestic violence in my own life. And I think for many of us, because of our limited perspective on domestic violence, we also have painted a picture of what victims look like, and that's often women. It's often, we think it's women living in poverty, and it's women who are helpless. And it wasn't until I stepped into my line of work in domestic violence that I began to understand that it was much bigger than that. And I was sitting in a women's group and I was listening to women share their own experiences about being victimized, and it sounded eerily familiar. And I said to myself, wow, is it possible that I, an educated woman who has a background in social work and who's worked with people from all walks of life, is currently in a situation of domestic violence and is completely unaware of that? And it was that instance and listening to these women's stories where I said, well, I think it's possible. I think I might be living in a abusive relationship. And so with this information, I asked myself a really important question, and that was, what am I going to do next? And obviously, I took steps to leave that relationship and continued working in domestic violence. And then another question was just really nagging at me, and it was, well, why? Well, how didn't I know that this was happening to me? And why is it such a pervasive problem that many people aren't aware that they're involved in? And the answer that I was able to come up with, and I think that many of us can also relate with, is that it exists everywhere. It exists everywhere, and it's hiding in plain sight. And so tonight, that is what I hope to share with you, is that domestic violence and our ability to normalize domestic violence is hiding in plain sight. How? And where is it hiding in plain sight? Well, one of the largest places that we see domestic violence portrayed and normalized is in our media. Unfortunately, we've seen sports stars, athletes, celebrities embroiled in domestic violence situations, and often those situations are just swept under the rug, and people keep moving, and not much attention's paid to it, and if you have enough money, it gets swept under the rug, unfortunately. And as we see in this ad, we sometimes even make light of those things. And we also see it within our own political system. We have and I know this might be controversial, but we do have a president that openly uses sexist language, has been accused of sexual assault, and these are things that, again, we have normalized. And so it's pretty easy to ask ourselves the question of how, and with our access and our ability to use social media as a conduit to share this information, and the amount of information that we receive that has a violent context to it, we again continue to normalize these things. So another way that we have normalized that is through our pay gap, and that still exists today. Women, unfortunately, are still making less money than men, and that, unfortunately, is another way that we do perpetuate domestic violence in our society. And again, it's just another way that we keep people trapped in that system. I ask those of you today who don't know much about domestic violence and who maybe have never seen themselves as a perpetrator or a victim, to spend some time self-reflecting and asking yourself, how do I perpetuate this problem? How do I keep this problem going? I have personally found a lot of healing through uplifting and helping other people, both in my line of work and what I do just out on my own, and especially empowering other women, because unfortunately 1 in 4 women have been a victim of domestic violence, and this isn't an issue that just impacts women, but I do feel that what my role is helping other women. I also encourage people to use their voices to share those experiences with other people, and to be open and to be honest about the violence that they have witnessed. And I also encourage us to hold people accountable, and I'm not just including men in this, including ourselves, and removing sexist language from our vocabulary, because those are just small ways that these issues hide in plain sight when we normalize them and we continue to use them in our vocabulary. And then again, just reflecting on my own healing, I have learned so much through this experience, and I have continued to heal through my work of working with other people in domestic violence. And I want to offer encouragement to anybody that's in a situation to please reach out for help. One of the best agencies here in town is Courage Connection, and they are a wonderful and willing resource. I want to thank everybody for your time this evening, and thanks again.